Hey there. Today's powerful topic fits perfectly within the Life Diet 365 framework on detoxing and removing negative people and places and things from our lives. Because one of the hardest detoxes is not from the strangers, co-workers, or casual friends. It's from, you guessed it, family. Many people remain connected to unhealthy family relationships out of guilt, obligation, history, their culture, or fear of being labeled the problem. The truth is that sharing a DNA with someone does not give them unlimited access to your peace. I'll say that again. Just because you share DNA with someone does not mean that they have unlimited access to your peace. So in this podcast episode, we're going to talk about, boundaries and accountability and the healing and the possibility of reconciliation. So let's go ahead and get started in this very difficult topic. Let's get started. Hey there, and welcome back to another amazing, awesome episode of the Life Diet 365 podcast. I am your host, Miss Straight Talk, and this is probably one of the most difficult detox topics that I've had since I started this podcast. And it's on family. Today's topic is when family becomes toxic and knowing when to repair and when to release. So I'm going to ask a question. I ask a lot of questions because this is really about your perspective from what you hear from me and using that information to shift gears, however. And I want to ask the question, have you ever found yourself dreading a phone call from a family member? Now, we should all raise our hands to that because we have. Don't trip. Be honest. Feeling anxious before a family gathering, maybe like a family reunion, a birthday party, or the holidays. And replaying hurtful conversations. And I think we've all experienced hurtful conversations long after they've ended because we just kind of replay them in our minds. And I did an episode where we kind of think about something we should have said or should have done, and it just kind of reels in our head. And if you've answered yes to at least one of these questions, then this conversation today is for you. And I think that every person listening to this particular episode can relate some way or another. So this is an episode that should be shared with at least 50 people because we all know someone who's experiencing this. And so there's this myth, there's this belief, there's this emotional or mental exchange that family gets unlimited access. And I'm here to tell you that that is not true. And if you've read my book, The Life Diet 365, Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of You, I share with you my own personal experience of how that is absolutely not true and how I regained control and reclaimed my life. Many of us were taught family is family, blood is thicker than water, you only get one family. And while those statements can be true and sound noble, these are the reasons. It's the very reason why people tolerate constant, statements or manipulation and disrespect and emotional abuse and guilt trips from their family. Because you say, well, that's family and I got to stick with it. Because that is, I'm going to make up a word. I don't know if it's a real word, but familial abuse from your family. And you don't have to accept that. Family relationships should not require you to sacrifice your mental health to maintain them, which means that you shouldn't be stressed out. You shouldn't have anxiety. You shouldn't be getting sick because you're maintaining a very unhealthy or very toxic family relationship. And so there is a difference between an unhealthy relationship, whether it's a family or with someone else, and toxic. And unhealthy just means that there's an aspect of this relationship that kind of has its triggers and it makes you upset or you don't like some things about it, but you kind of get through and they may take advantage of you. Let's just kind of put it like that. But a toxic relationship, it causes you harm, mental, emotional, and even physical harm. So just know the difference between that. So again, they shouldn't require you to sacrifice your mental health. Um, and then you can ask a question, and you can ask this question with any relationship. Do I feel emotionally safe with this person? Do I feel respected? And that is key, because it's all about respect. You can't be out in the world and on your workplace and, in social organizations and demanding respect and need to feel respected, but you're not getting respected at home, or you're not being respected by your family members, those who are closest to you. And, sometimes we're afraid. We think about, can I be honest without being punished? And, I believe sometimes we find it hard to be honest with family members for fear of retaliation or separation or being labeled. And then another question you can ask is, do I leave interactions feeling drained or uplifted? And that's a question you can ask in any type of relationship. Like, am I feeling drained from this, or am I feeling uplifted? And I've identified people in my life who fall in either one of those categories. And I'm not trying to draw near to somebody that's draining me. And so here's another thing that you can look at, signs you may need a family detox. Yes, a family detox. Here we go. You ready? Every conversation turns into criticism. Yes, there are some people who are in families where every conversation turns into criticism. It can be, if you want to change your hair color, comes criticism. If you're gaining weight, there's criticism. If you're wanting to move away from the family, there's criticism. Nothing is ever good enough. Your choices are constantly questioned. Your parenting is criticized or questioned. There's never like a kudos, great job. I may not like the decision, but, I support what you feel is best for you. No, you don't get that. And what you do for work is criticized. It may not be as great as another family member. You may have a blue collar job, and a family member, another sibling or another relative, has a very high paying white collar job or corporate job. And then there's that criticism. You find yourself constantly defending your life, defending your choices, defending decisions, just defending everything. And if you sit and take a little bit of time and think about what I just said, you will find that you're always exhausted after this type of an experience. Family members, here's another one. Signs you may need a family detox. They only contact you when they need something. You like a resource and not a relative. It's all transactional. That's an easy one. I don't even need to belabor that one. You can figure that one out on your own. Your boundaries are ignored. Go back and check out the previous episodes on boundaries. You say, don't call me at work, and yet they still call you at work. Or they may even show up on your job, or they call you after your bedtime hours, or they don't respect, when you're spending time with your boo. They always want to, they say, well, we're family. That person is just your boyfriend, or that's just your girlfriend. Like, we come. They may put your personal business out there, showing up unannounced. And you tell them these things. You tell them what your boundaries are, and they do it anyway. Your boundaries are being ignored and not respected. They create drama, then expect you to clean it up. You can probably go think of 1,000 situations in your family where something has happened, and then now you're the one that has to kind of clean it up and be the peacemaker. The emotional dumping ground. They'll say, call so-and-so, call so-and-so. No, don't call me. I don't have nothing to do with that. You feel guilty for taking care of yourself. And this is overall. Like this one right here, don't feel guilty for taking care of yourself at all. On this particular day, as I sit and do this podcast, I stayed in bed 2.5 to almost 3 hours later than I usually would on a, weekend morning. And I didn't feel guilty about it. I said, you know what? My body needs rest. I need to rest my mind. I need to just take a chill pill. And you have to be able to do that without feeling guilty for taking care of yourself. The minute you prioritize yourself, they want to try to use the terms that accusing you of being selfish, or you're acting different, you're acting funny, you acting this way, or here's the really big one. All right, lean in. I know you've heard this one. You think you better than everybody else? What? Where'd that come from? Like, I have a job that requires me to travel and I'm on the road, or I have a very demanding hours. And just because I want to pull back and take time for myself, you think I'm acting like I'm better than everybody else? Boy, bye. Girl, bye. And, before you walk away, before cutting ties, you have to ask yourself, have I clearly communicated my concerns? And that's with any kind of relationship. Like, you just don't break things off and just cut things off and say, I'm not doing this, because sometimes people do that because that's the easiest way to remove from a situation, but it still doesn't resolve what's at the core of the issue. What's the core problem? Have I clearly communicated my concerns? Many people just expect people to read their minds or subtle hints. Don't give subtle hints. Be very clear and very concise about your needs and your expectations. Have I explained how their behavior affects me? Have I communicated my boundaries clearly? Have I given them the opportunity to change? And sometimes people, in all honesty, I'll give, family members and friends and relationships, the benefit of the doubt is a lot of times they don't realize that they've done this thing or they're doing this thing. And if you bring it to their attention, you have to give people an opportunity to change. And sometimes healing begins with difficult conversations, and they have to be had. And sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, clarity is in the middle of that sandwich. So whether it goes well or it doesn't, knowing in the middle that you were very clear about what it is that you wanted. And when possible, I'm not advocating to damage and sever relationships just to sever them. Like, when repair is possible, like, do what you can to repair the relationship. Now, it has to be reciprocated. Like, everybody has to be working to do their part. Relationships can often be repaired when both people are willing. And repair requires accountability. Not, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I understand how my actions may hurt you. I understand how what I've said may hurt you. I can see where I've been judgmental. Like, you have to have that. And then respect boundaries, even when you don't agree with them. Somebody doesn't have to agree with your boundaries. You don't have to agree with someone else's boundaries. Just respect them. And consistency. Change isn't proven in one conversation. It just can't happen because you have a phone call and you say what you need to say, and then you wake up tomorrow and everything's supposed to be rosy. It doesn't happen that way. It's proven through repeated behavior over time. And then again, there has to be mutual effort. One person can't repair the relationship alone. It's a team effort. And I believe that once clarity enters in, and understanding and respect, things will just naturally evolve. You won't even have to feel like you're working at it. But when it's time to walk away, you'll know when it's time to walk away. And sometimes the healthiest decision is distance. Not because you hate them, not because you're bitter, but because you're just exhausted, just tired, just burnt out. And, walking away may be necessary when the abuse continues or manipulation continues, the boundaries are repeatedly ignored, there's no accountability, and the relationship is damaging your mental health. And remember this, distance is not revenge. Distance is protection. Just because someone is family does not mean they're entitled to unrestricted access to your life. So as always, here we go. Here's some action steps. I'm going to run right through these. Conduct a family relationship audit. Write down the names of family members you interact with regularly. For each person, ask yourself question. Ask, do I feel respected? Do I feel valued? Do I feel safe? Do I feel drained after interacting with them? And then notice the patterns. Identify one boundary. Choose a boundary you've been avoiding by not, you can not answer calls, refuse to engage in gossip or family. They kind of say it's family meeting, but it might end up just being family gossip. And decline requests that creates hardships for you. And I know, when family comes to us, especially when it's a money situation or if someone is looking for a place to crash for a while, like, be clear even in your answers. Don't be so quick to respond to things like that. Decline to requests that create hardship for you. And limiting time spent at family events. You don't have to show up at everything. You are not required to be at everything. You have your own life. Practice enforcing this. Find those ways and start noticing, the change in yourself. Because that's the key. If you can change yourself, then, you have the power to enforce what you're expecting. And if repair is your goal for the relationship, which I hope it is, if it's possible, if it's not abusive, if it's not manipulative, choose one person and communicate clearly. You say things, when you say this, I feel, or going forward, this is what I need. That's being clear about what you want. And give yourself permission to just say no. I love it. If you haven't listened to my 2017 TEDx talk, The Gift of No, check that out, because saying no, protect your peace and stop fixing everybody, because you are not the family repair person. So I'm going to leave you with this closing thought. One of the most difficult lessons you'll ever learn is that loving someone and allowing unlimited access to you are not the same thing. You can love people from afar, love them from a distance. You can forgive people without reconnecting. And if repair is possible, pursue it with wisdom, like tread lightly and monitor your own triggers. But if the relationship continues to cost you your peace, remember, the Life Diet 365 isn't just about detoxing from toxic thoughts, but also from toxic people. Sometimes it's about detoxing from unhealthy family dynamics so you can finally become who you're meant to be. So ask yourself, am I maintaining this relationship out of love or out of guilt? Your answer may reveal what your next detox needs to begin, or where it needs to begin. So, hey, again, I'm going to be clear. I'm not telling you to go out there with your machete and start severing relationships, but you know the ones that aren't healthy for you, and you know the ones that are causing you damage, mental and emotional, and even physical, and you have to find a way to remove yourself from it. So you determine if it's worth repairing or if you just have to keep distance. So hopefully you've gained some nuggets from this episode today. And we all know someone who's sitting somewhere for almost 15 minutes who can join this conversation. So feel free to share this and many of the other episodes of the Life Diet 365 podcast. I'm your host, Miss Straight Talk. Take care. Bye-bye. And just like that, another conversation, another perspective, and hopefully another step toward reclaiming yourself. Listen, every time you say yes to everybody else at the expense of yourself, you are teaching people that your boundaries are negotiable. Listen, constantly sacrificing yourself to keep everybody else comfortable will eventually leave you emotionally bankrupt. You do not have to earn rest, apologize for protecting your peace, or explain every boundary you set. Because around here, we don't say no with guilt. We say it with clarity. Until next time, protect your peace, guard your energy, and remember, what drains you will never sustain you. This has been the Life Diet 365 podcast with Miss Straight Talk. Thanks for listening, and I hope you will subscribe and join me the next time. Take care. Bye-bye.